You have to make up 25 minutes of time, but I know you can do it. On ed policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Eisen. Will the Committee on Education Policy please come to order? We will now invite public comment preceding the educational policy agenda items. We have no speakers who have requested to speak during this committee. We have one item on today's consent agenda, approval of the minutes from the May meeting. If there are no objections, the minutes are approved. The committee has two items on today's discussion agenda. Item 1 will be an information item regarding the Graduation Initiative 2025. The item will be presented by Dr. Lauren Blanchard, Executive Vice Chancellor for Academic and Student Affairs, and Dr. Horace Mitchell, President of CSU Bakersfield. Before I turn it over to Dr. Blanchard, I would like to acknowledge recent recognition of the California State University's Graduation Initiative 2025 work. Our former colleague and current Senator Stephen Glazier hosted a Senate Select Committee on student success efforts at the CSU. I had the opportunity to speak at the hearing alongside Chris Miller, Chair of the Academic Senate, Maggie White, there you are, Maggie, President of CSSA, and a number of campus representatives. This hearing provided a positive platform for discussing the ongoing work of the Graduation Initiative and its importance to all CSU students. And I thank Senator Glazier for the opportunity. And just I want to say both Senators Glazier and Ben Allen in particular were particularly supportive of our efforts. So I think it was a very good meeting. With that, Dr. Blanchard, please begin the presentation.
Thank you so much, Chair Kimbell. Today's report on the CSU Graduation Initiative 2025 will focus on work underway to improve student success and meet the future workforce needs of California. There are 4 topics that we will address today. The first is the operational priorities central to achieving our Graduation Initiative 2025 goals, the work underway to improve our approach to academic preparation, campus and system-wide efforts to ensure student well-being, and the upcoming Graduation Initiative 2025 Symposium. As a reminder, the 6 operational priority areas for Graduation Initiative 2025 are: first, academic preparation. We will provide CSU students, including those who arrive academically underprepared, the opportunity and support needed to complete 30 college-level semester units, 45 quarter units, before beginning their second academic year. Secondly, enrollment management. We will ensure students are able to enroll in the courses they need when they need them. Third, student engagement and well-being. We will continue to address the well-being of all CSU students while fostering a strong sense of belongingness on campuses. Fourth, financial support. We will ensure that financial need does not impede student success. Fifth, data-driven decision-making. We will use data-rich evidence to identify and advance the most successful academic support programs. And sixth, administrative barriers. We will identify and remove unnecessary administrative impediments. So at the March Board of Trustees meeting, we shared a vision of a new approach to academic preparation. After an initial round of consultations, we circulated a draft executive order inviting additional feedback. In May, we provided a progress update on this work to the board. The second round of feedback was collected and is now being incorporated into a new executive order. When implemented, this new policy will ensure all incoming freshmen receive the clear message that they do belong at the CSU and have the opportunity to begin earning college credit as soon as they arrive on our respective campuses. Those actions also align with policy directives included in the recently adopted state budget. In recent presentations, we have focused on what are commonly considered academic matters such as math and English readiness, course availability, and advising. However, there is a host of other student support activities such as mental health services, basic needs, and co-curricular activities, including experiences outside of the classroom. These activities have a tremendous impact on a student's sense of belongingness and ultimately on their timely completion of a CSU degree. Today, we are further providing information about several system and campus efforts that align with our student engagement and well-being operational priority. As one example, the CSU continues to address food and housing insecurity challenges, as well as students' other basic needs. Last year, the CSU shared the findings from a study commissioned by Chancellor White, shedding light on how prevalent these issues are for CSU students. Based on these results, campuses have opened or expanded food pantries, established programs to provide students with emergency resources, and implemented other innovative type programs. We recently hired a new director at the system office who will be responsible for developing a comprehensive system-wide plan to work with campuses in supporting students' basic needs. I am pleased to have our new Director of Student Wellness and Basic Needs Initiative here with us today and would like to introduce to you Dr. Denise Bevely. Denise? So as you've seen her in the near future, I promise you will be hearing from her to provide us an expanded update on our Basic Needs Initiative for the California State University. And we certainly welcome you aboard with us, Denise. In addition, our campuses are working tirelessly to ensure that students feel welcome before they arrive on campus and throughout their college experience. This is made possible through a suite of carefully designed student support services that are seamlessly integrated with students' academic experiences to facilitate their path to a college degree. There are many noteworthy examples of this throughout the CSU. Today, I'd like to invite CSU Bakersfield President Horace Mitchell to speak about how student engagement and well-being initiatives are implemented on his campus. President Mitchell?
Thank you, Dr. Blanchard. When students have a sense of belonging and it's clear to them that their campus is concerned about their well-being, it supports student retention and graduation. And as Dr. Blanchard said, all CSU campuses have programs that address these issues. I want to highlight just very briefly several programs at CSU Bakersfield. I would start by saying that a portion of our vision statement is that we will enhance the quality of the student experience. That has been a fundamental part of what we've been all about. And what this means, among other things, is that students must feel welcome and that they belong here at the campus. And it also means that we must have supportive faculty and staff, some of whom look like or have life experience that are similar to our students. One of the first things that we did this year was to use some Graduation Initiative 2025 funding to hire a counselor who's different from our regular counselors in the counseling center. This particular counselor is a licensed counselor who works with at-risk students who are on academic probation or in academic jeopardy. The counselor helps students survive academic trauma, counter disempowering thoughts and negative self-talk, and help them to develop academic and emotional skills and coping strategies. Another of our initiatives is what we call the First Generation Initiative. And what this amounts to is that every member of our 7-member president's cabinet is a first-generation college student. And we have started this campaign of having these posters around campus because more than 55% of our students are first-generation college students, and we want them to know that they are in an environment where people understand what it means to be a first-generation student, where their parents wouldn't have the background of collegiate experience to provide as much support as they would need. And so our posters on campus have first-generation administrators, faculty, and staff with their photos, degrees, and a statement about what it meant to them to be a first-generation student. We have established a number of affinity groups, Latino, Asian American, African American, LGBTQ+, women, and international faculty and staff to support students through mentorship programs and other programs, including significant participation in cultural graduation celebrations. With respect to student programming, we've done a lot in this area. And in particular, in my new student convocation address each year, I emphasize to our students that in addition to all of the 100 or so student clubs and organizations that we have, if there's a club organization that they believe they could benefit from having on campus, they actually have the possibility of starting that we're a new campus, you can get things started, and in fact that ASI provides startup funding for such organizations. And I want to take a second just to acknowledge Alana Lim and Alana, stand up Alana please. Alana was the executive vice president of ASI at CSUB last year, and she is now the chair of CSSA. And thank you, Alana, for all that you've contributed to these many things that we've been doing on campus. When we look at student leadership and such, we are concerned, obviously, about supporting students in every way. And we've decided that having a focus on student leadership development for all students is important. And so we have developed what we call the Student Leadership Hall of Fame. And with respect to student athletes in particular, we have a Student Athlete Leadership Academy, which supports student athletes in terms of preparing them for their experiences beyond their athletics competition. And then finally, we had opened some new housing, and we've repurposed the old housing to have various affinity groups in those units, including a Veterans Center, a Center for College Access and Success, a Multicultural Alliance and Gender Equity Resource Center, campus advocate and education coordinator, academic advising, international programs, study abroad programs, and our Kegley Center for Student Success. All of these are intended to help students feel a sense of belonging and to have them understand that their well-being is central to the success of a university. And of course, our ultimate goal, as it is for all of us, is that these students are retained, successful, and that they graduate. Thank you, Dr. Blanchard.
Thank you so much, President Mitchell. So the report that you just heard from Dr. Mitchell today represents just a small fraction of the work that occurs every day at the CSU, and we look forward to continuing to highlight examples of these important activities at future board meetings. Before concluding, I would like to announce that this year's Graduation Initiative 2025 Symposium has been set for October 12th, 11th, and 12th here in Long Beach, with a focus on closing the equity gap in college completion. This year's symposium will feature nationally recognized speakers sharing their experience with evidence-based strategies that support student success. You should have received a save the date invitation in your board packet, and I certainly hope that each board member will be able to be there on October 11th and 12th. Chair Kimbell, that concludes our report. I'm joined by Dr. James Minor, and we stand ready to answer any questions that you might have at this time.
Thank you for providing the board with this update on the graduation initiative. And yes, belongingness is a real word. It's a noun. I wondered about it. Anyway, do we have any questions? All right. Jane. All right. We'll begin with Trustee Abrego.
Great story by Horace over there. We get close to $85 million annually for the graduation initiative. And I'm wondering if we're setting aside sufficient money for the evaluation of this effort. So at the end of the day, we can tell legislators, this is how the investment is paying off. This is the data that we have collected. And sometimes we don't put enough effort in those areas to develop a track record on the accomplishments that we have. So I'm asking you, do you feel comfortable with the amount of money that's going into the evaluation of our initiative, of our efforts?
That's a great point, Trustee Abrego. We have just entered into a contractual agreement with a consultant who will be working with us to do exactly what you have just presented, and that is to create an evaluation system for the effectiveness of the graduation initiative. We certainly had elements of it in mind, but we're working with someone that will be tasked with the responsibility of taking our ideas and shaping it in such a way where we will know not only on an annual basis, but certainly even on a quarterly basis, the impact, the effect, the results of the graduation initiative, not only for reporting to the legislator, but more importantly, for your purposes as a board, and also for the purposes of providing that kind of immediate feedback to our college presidents.
Thank you.
Trustee Carney.
Thank you. Dia Poole at her last presentation at the May board meeting talked about the Alumni Association trying to take on, in part, the issue of homeless students and seeking out among our vast alumni base people who live near campuses, who might have an extra bedroom, bathroom, who would be willing to take in a student who would otherwise be homeless. And, this really fits in with the whole notion of the shared economy and finding resources in new places and that kind of thing. So I'm just wondering what the follow-up on that is. And obviously it would take a lot of coordination to implement that. But are we really moving forward with that? Are we helping the Alumni Association with that?
So the short answer is yes, absolutely. And I've got to give the Alumni Association a lot of credit. They have sort of taken this up. We went to them early or mid last year and asked the question of what the appropriate intersections would be with the graduation initiative. And they were as enthusiastic and aggressive about doing this, more so than we hoped they would be. But I think you're right in saying that the coordination of these efforts is where the magic will lie in really creating reasonable intersections between our alumni and our student success efforts. And let me just give you one example of how quickly these things can become complicated, and the sort of liability issues that may surround, right, students who are being connected in those kinds of ways to supplement student housing on campuses. So we want to be careful. We want to do things the right way, but the short answer to your question is yes, absolutely. We have every expectation that we're going to be able to gain ground in terms of supporting students' basic needs in partnership with our alumni.
Great. And at some point, could we receive a report showing what steps each campus is taking to address food insecurity? I know there's some variety among the campuses, but the legislature's taken some steps to make it easier to use what we used to call food stamps. I forget now what they are called now exactly. Available to students and be able to be used on campuses and maybe in the dining hall facilities. Could we just get a written report on what each campus has done on food insecurity?
Facetiously, I would ask you to just turn to your left, and the person that's responsible for helping to make sure that that presentation will be developed, Dr. Denise Beverly, is the person that is already beginning to work to pull together a lot of that information. And I have to say, Trustee Carney, you've been asking for this for a while, along with a number of other board members, and we really wanted to provide the best information before we would come forward with it. And so with that, with the hiring of Dr. Beverly, she's already hit the ground running, pulling those kinds of information together to ensure that by the fall semester, and I would venture to say certainly no later than the November meeting, you will have that presentation that lays out as comprehensively as we possibly can, not only services around food insecurities, but certainly looking at the housing insecurity side as well. We just met with CSSA Executive Committee on yesterday, and we know that that area of housing insecurity is one that's very near and dear to them, and wanting to get more information on how we might be able to, as challenging as it is, conquer that large issue that so many of our students are having, depending largely on where they live. And so by the November meeting, you will have, the board will have the benefit of a comprehensive presentation surrounding the Basic Needs Initiative. And I think you'll be pretty impressed with the kind of work and responsiveness that's occurring campus by campus at the CSU.
Thank you.
Chair Eisen?
Thank you. I'm really thrilled that you concentrated today on this, what's the noun, belongingness. Because
Noun.
in my campus visits, I always try to meet with students and understand not only what are the barriers to graduating within, the 4-year time period, but what are the kinds of things that the students feel have connected them up with the institution in such a way that they did persist through some difficult times. Because we know that not only don't our students graduate as quickly as we would want them to, but what is the number? 50% don't graduate at all. And that's the group that I'm so concerned with. And this issue that Dr. Mitchell addressed about making sure they feel a sense of belongingness and a connection. Clearly, if you talk to students who have persisted, and I think we just heard this from our student trustee, it was connecting up with a faculty member, an advisor, an affiliation group. In Chico State, they have the what I call the living room, where the students meet with each other and hang out together and feel that they are connected. That, I think, is really key to solving not only the timeliness of the graduation rate, but the persistence as well. And I wanted to just mention a source of potential data on this, because I've been reviewing the applications of students for the trustee scholarship. And these students, who are so remarkable, many of them have had to overcome all kinds of things to persist. And just reading their applications gives you an enormous understanding of the kinds of things that have worked to keep them connected and to keep them persisting and to get them finally to graduation. So I don't know to what extent they would be happy to allow academic affairs to review those, but I think it would help in our understanding, which is kind of serendipitous in terms of what we know about why students persist and don't persist. Thanks.
Any more questions or comments? Emily, our newest trustee.
Thank you, Vice Chancellor Blanchard, for this information about the graduation initiative. It's very helpful. I was hoping that, at least for my information, you could maybe define the Basic Needs Initiative a little further. I guess I just feel that a student who's homeless, their basic needs are different than a student who isn't homeless, vice versa. And if you could just elaborate a little more.
It is a work in progress, but we know that the two main components that we've already begun developing center on the whole food insecurity piece and the housing insecurity piece. And housing insecurity, that would incorporate, obviously, the kinds of services that the campuses would need to provide for homeless students and those that are just challenged by cost associated in getting the requisite kind of housing, to ensure that that would not challenge them in any way in their academic achievement. So those are two that I know for a fact that we're looking at, but I know that Dr. Beverly has some thoughts about some other areas that would fall under basic needs initiative, and that will be working in collaboration with the students to establish what those are. Does that help? Thank you.
Trustee Melendez?
Thank you very much, Trustee Kimball. I wanted to ask the question following up on our newest member's question. You know, when I think of basic needs, I also think, and I think you've spoken about food insecurity and housing insecurity, but hand in hand, I feel mental health and the support when it comes to providing mental and physical, health for the students. So many of the students who face food insecurity and housing insecurity also face a lot of challenges in terms of stressors that come into their lives as a result. And so I also see that in your chart in the basic needs, you include mental well-being as well as physical health. So I think we tend at times to look at these as siloed, but in many ways, when we look at the whole student, I think we need to look at how these interact. I think your infographic does that. But I think as we discuss them, I think we should also not silo them out, but really speak to them as in a holistic manner and as how they affect the student holistically. Yeah.
I couldn't agree with you more, and I couldn't have stated it anymore. I know that the two student board members, they're looking at me because we just met on yesterday, and they laid out like 5 priority areas. The very first item of priority for them is looking at how we might increase mental health services on our respective campuses, and looking at that within the context of students being able to be successful, complete those degrees, and more importantly, understanding the relationships among a number of different factors. So thank you very much. And I don't know if you want to offer any more based on what I just said, but I know that that is a focal area for you. All right. He said that they're good.
All right, that's it. We'll move on to item 2. It's an information item regarding the National College Health Assessment. The item will be presented by Dr. Lauren Blanchard and Ray Murillo, Director of Student Programs, and Jim Lang, Coordinator of Alcohol and Other Drug Initiatives and faculty member at San Diego State University. Dr. Blanchard, please begin.
Thank you so much, Chair Kimball. I'm dragging this out because I want to make sure everyone is able to get seated appropriately. So every 2 years, the Chancellor's Office is required to provide an update on the impact of alcohol policies and programs at the California State University. Responding to trustee interest in the well-being of CSU students, this report provides an opportunity to assess the health and welfare of CSU students, which are integral to their success both inside and outside of the classroom. In previous years, this report was compiled using individual campus assessments and reports, which led to snapshots of student health from individual campuses, but not necessarily a clear, comprehensive, system-wide picture. In 2016, based on recommendations from campus vice presidents, counseling, and mental health professionals, the CSU used the National College Health Assessment NCHA survey system-wide to assess student wellness, health, and safety. Questions covered a variety of topics, from physical health to personal safety to high-risk behaviors. While a few individual campuses had previously participated in the survey, this is the first time using this survey across all 23 campuses. As part of the biennial alcohol and substance use report, we are using the NCHA results to better inform campus planning efforts related to alcohol and substance abuse prevention and support. The results from the system-wide administration of NCHA provide the most comprehensive picture that we've had to date of CSU student health and well-being that we've ever captured. The NCHA survey also provides a reference group of students enrolled at other colleges and universities nationwide, allowing us to compare the CSU results nationally. Throughout the survey results, CSU students generally fare better than or at par with the national reference group with regards to all dimensions of wellness. In subsequent board meetings, we will provide presentations on other topics covered by this NCHA report. At this time, I'd like to invite Mr. Ray Murillo, Director of Student Programs, to review several key points from the survey related to alcohol and substance use and discuss campus approaches to prevention and support. Ray?
Thank you, Dr. Blanchard. The NCHA survey results represent data from 23,000 CSU students, approximately 5% of the total CSU student population. Based on the demographics of the survey respondents, we see the sample closely aligns with the CSU student body as a whole. One item of note, within the gender responses, students were designated non-binary if selected yes to transgender or if their sex at birth is non-consistent with their gender identity. While the survey did allow for data analysis by multiple demographics such as age or race and ethnicity, the alcohol substance use results showed no statistically significant differences among any demographic with the exception of slight variations by gender and gender identity. According to the NCHA report, approximately a quarter of the CSU students reported never having used alcohol, while a little more than half reported drinking in the last 30 days prior to responding to the survey. The response rate from CSU students indicating the use of alcohol within the last 30 days is lower than the national reference group, which is 60%. The NCHA survey also included questions regarding drug use. When examining marijuana use, approximately 17% of CSU respondents used marijuana in the last 30 days. Non-binary students reported the most use, followed by males, then females. The results are slightly above the national reference group, which indicated 15% of respondents used marijuana within the last 30 days. California is one of 5 states that have medical marijuana and recreational marijuana laws. Although state-level research may be needed, this may account for the results being slightly above the reference group. Finally, 12% of students indicated they had used prescription drugs in the past year that were not prescribed to them. This includes antidepressants, painkillers, stimulants, and other prescription drugs. The results are slightly lower than the national reference group of 16%. Here, we see similar results between male and female students. Non-binary students reported using prescription drugs at a slightly higher levels, albeit at roughly the same rate as the national reference group. As referenced previously, the data from the NCHA provide the opportunity for our campuses and system to develop and refine our efforts related to alcohol and other drug abuse prevention and support based on direct student responses. Campus efforts are centered around 6 areas related to alcohol and other substance issues: policies, enforcement and legal issues, education and prevention programs, training, intervention and treatment, assessment, and resources. I will take a moment to describe campus efforts addressed under 2 of these areas. Under training, intervention, and treatment, there are 3 key areas of campus programming: recovery programs, screening, and bystander intervention. Collegiate recovery programs are increasing nationally as part of the overall alcohol, tobacco, and other drug programming and support services. The recovery programs are a holistic approach to supporting students in recovery, not only by emphasizing the importance of maintaining sobriety, but also by increasing student involvement and increasing college completion. Bystander intervention programs continue to flourish across the system. The goals include empowering students to recognize alcohol poisoning and overdose, identify and report bullying, intimidation, discrimination, and/or harassment, and learn how to effectively intervene with their peers. Campuses also have a range of education and prevention programs for students related to alcohol and other drugs. The programs are often broad-based and integrated into residential life programming, student leadership, or other student organization programming. In other cases, more tailored education and prevention programs have been developed to focus and support specific student groups, such as collaboration with women's centers, Greek life, and LGBTQ centers. We're fortunate to have nationally recognized student affairs colleagues within CSU whose work has focused on alcohol and drug abuse and prevention. I would like now to invite Dr. James Lang, San Diego State University's coordinator of alcohol and other drug initiatives, to speak briefly about the policies and programs in place at San Diego State University and the impact they have had. Jim.
Thank you. Thank you again. At SDSU, we launched the NCHA survey in March of 2016. We randomly selected 7,000 students, both undergraduate and graduate, to receive an email invitation. Of those students, 701 students completed the questionnaire. The data matches pretty well with our understanding of our students based on surveys we had deployed several years earlier, despite the fact that the survey was conducted in the 30 days following spring break. For instance, with respect to heavy episodic drinking or binge drinking, we are still a bit below the national average. One area that we did learn more about was marijuana use. That the NCHA asks about frequency of use and not just any use, let us see that there are a substantial number of students who are using marijuana 3 or more times a week. That may be an increasing trend, as data from national surveys are showing that with legalization, the prevalence of higher frequency use is going up. Of great concern is that this may begin to translate into a growing impact on student success within our institutions. Can I have the next slide, please? The NCHA also allows us to examine the reach of our programming. For instance, this graph shows that almost 80% of our students reported receiving AOD-related information during the past year. Sexual violence programming has similarly been very widely distributed. But the survey also asked students about their interest in receiving programming. There's an interesting contrast that appears. Not only is the interest in receiving information on other topic areas notably higher than for AOD information, many students are receiving AOD programming who are not excited by the topic. Alcohol and drug programming is nothing new to most students. They've been hearing many of these same messages since at least middle school. Now in college, most students are highly resistant and often cynical to AOD messages. Oh, sorry, AOD, I'm referring to alcohol and other drugs. Some have referred to this phenomenon as resistance, and it is certainly something we had anecdotally observed for some time. Knowing that an AOD presentation would be received by a room full of resistant students shapes the way we conduct our programming. Using methods such as motivational interviewing and motivational enhancement techniques, a presenter can work towards softening this natural resistance and avoid hardening the audience against the message. This is also the strategy we've used within one-on-one programs that we implement with students. Can I have the next slide, please? Our programs also try to be comprehensive in functions. Focusing too heavily on educational or counseling approaches can end up excluding various populations and can also fail to address those with the highest levels of resistance. It also can miss important determinants of AOD misuse and possibly factors that can help reduce it. About 15 years ago, we developed a model to guide our programs that encompass the various factors a prevention effort could impact use. The idea of the model is to put into place a system whereby students' attitudes and motivations to use or abuse AODs are changed. Second, opportunities for students to act responsibly while fulfilling developmental and social needs are provided. And third, access to AODs is reduced to limit excessive consumption. These domains act both within the campus and the broader community level, and thus often require community action and involvement. Finally, all programmatic activities should be developed and evaluated with an environment of rigorous scientific methods that enable measurement of improvements in individual and public health outcomes, cost efficiencies, program sustainability, and continuous program improvement. Our ultimate goal is to prevent and assist with to prevent AOD abuse and misuse and support the overall well-being of our students. These efforts benefit their academic success by helping them to persist and complete their degrees. I'm going to turn it over to Stephanie Waits-Gallia, our Director of Health Promotion, to describe a few of the programs.
Can we change slide, please? Thank you. We now want to highlight some programming examples from SDSU that work within the framework that we just shared. These are specifically designed to address students who may have or demonstrate high levels of resistance to AOD programming or behavior change. Two of the interventions we use to engage students one-on-one are eCheckup to Go Alcohol and the Aspire program. eCheckup to Go Alcohol is an interactive web program that allows college students to enter information about their drinking patterns and receive feedback about their alcohol use. It was developed at SDSU and is now licensed by over 600 colleges across the world and has been taken more than 1.6 million times. eCheckup to Go is used by 6 CSU campuses currently. This online assessment takes about 30 minutes to complete, is self-guided, and requires no face-to-face contact with the counselor or administrator. The existing scientific literature on alcohol eCheckup to Go was reviewed by the National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism, and it was determined to be an effective and cost-effective alcohol intervention. Beginning in the fall 2008 semester, a university policy required the alcohol eCheckup to Go to be completed by all of SDSU's incoming freshmen and transfer students prior to registration for their next semester courses. We're fortunate to have robust data for this program as it's utilized in many campuses around the world. Aspire is a brief individualized alcohol and other drugs program. Students are referred to our Aspire program for alcohol and other drug policy violations on and around campus, most often having been mandated by our Student Rights and Responsibilities or the Residential Education Office. This leverages the support and engagement from our key partners through the university's alcohol and other drug work group. The Aspire program consists of individual sessions with a therapist and involves an assessment of overall functioning at the university, such as alcohol and other drug use, academic performance, and mental health. On average, SDSU sees between 500 to 600 students per year with the Aspire program. We also offer targeted programming efforts for specific populations who may be at higher risk of engaging in problematic alcohol and other drug behaviors or exist in environments that increase the chances of higher risk behaviors taking place. Members of these populations typically have a relatively high level of resistance to programming or intervention. While we have strategies we employ and find are successful with our high risk and high resistant populations, we also prioritize developing programming that is both highly tailored and highly diversified in order to effectively reach students in our diverse student body. Our student community is extremely diverse. We have 40% Pell Grant recipients, 54% student of colors, 22 are first generation students. We have one of the largest veteran communities in the nation, and our LGBTQ plus population is growing every year. Due to this, we understand that a one-size-fits-all approach would not allow us to gain the access or efficacy that we desire with our alcohol and other drug efforts. Some examples of programming designed using this approach is Aztec Choices, which is an individual alcohol and other drug prevention counseling program offered to new student athletes, modeled after our Aspire program. We were able to serve 73 student athletes in the program in 2015 and 16, and a brief evaluation of the program showed improvements in a variety of alcohol consumption behaviors, as well as frequency of feeling guilt or remorse after drinking. We also have harm reduction programs designed for and implemented with fraternity and sorority members. An example would be Manners and Sister, which are both peer health education courses that focus on giving students the knowledge and skills necessary to assist in the prevention of problematic and risky cultural factors within the Greek community that often lead to harmful behaviors and circumstances, including sexual assault and alcohol and other drug misuse and abuse. While the Fraught Manners program has been on campus for over 15 years, the sister program was developed 2 years ago to focus on addressing the unique challenges faced by sorority women and aims to empower participants to adopt better behavior and preventative practices. We also have a house party training, which is a workshop designed to train and engage fraternity executive officers to identify and reduce high-risk environmental factors which may be present in party environments, many of which are constructed and hosted by fraternity men. The aim of the house program is to provide safer party spaces for all those attending Greek parties, including fraternity men, sorority women, and non-Greek students alike. All 3 programs work with students themselves, gaining buy-in from community leaders through training and educational components of the program. We also include members of both the social fraternities and sororities, as well as our cultural fraternities and sororities, again, understanding and recognizing the importance of working with students where they're at, and utilizing their diverse perspectives and experiences to tailor programming to address their specific peer group needs. These programs, in conjunction with front-loaded and ongoing alcohol and other drug training, resources, and increased enforcement, and limited access to alcohol and other drugs, has resulted in a drastic change in the Greek party landscape in the last 10 years. In addition to targeted population programming, we've also developed late-night programming that serves as alcohol and other drug-free events that students may attend in lieu of events that pose a higher risk for engaging in problematic alcohol and other drug behaviors. Aztec Nights and Livewell Late Nights are both large-scale events designed for this exact purpose. The Livewell Late Nights are a more recent addition and have a wellness-focused in addition to being an alternative to drinking events. These on-campus events are offered at different points throughout the academic year and offer a varying array of activities and incentives for students to participate in order to appeal to a diverse student body. These programs are developed for an entire student body, not only those who live on campus, and we've been pleased to see the increased participation of commuter students in recent years. All of the aforementioned programming and one-on-one interventions highlighted today are evidence-based and, as discussed, utilize motivational tactics at a population and individual level to combat the resistance many students experience to alcohol and other drug programming, information, and education.
I'll now turn it back to Executive Vice Chancellor Blanchard for some closing thoughts.
Well, first, thank you so much, Ray, Jim, and Stephanie. There's no greater work on which we are focused than the success of all of our CSU students. As you've heard from our colleagues at San Diego State University, our campuses engage in a comprehensive approach to address alcohol and other drug use by providing students with the education, training, assessment, and support they need. The NCHA survey results provide an opportunity to gauge the wellness, health, and safety of our students across the CSU system so that campuses can provide and refine the services and programs available to support student engagement and well-being. While this is the first year using the NCHA survey system-wide, it will not be the last. In spring 2018, we will begin the survey process again, providing an opportunity to hear from our CSU students. Through this process, we will gather an updated picture of CSU students' health, safety, and well-being, one we can then compare to our most recent results, and one which can further inform campus programming and services. Chair Kimbell, that concludes our report, and we stand ready to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you for that very interesting and important report on alcohol and drug abuse, which I think we all agree is really a serious issue. Are there any questions or comments? Trustee Newsom?
Just, and forgive me if I got it wrong, just as it relates to, was it the e-checkup to go that is only now being adopted in 6 campuses? And the question obviously is why 6 if it's as effective as it was?
Right. So each campus adopts different online education programs. E-Checkup to Go is one of them. Other campuses use alcohol.edu for all residential students, for all incoming freshmen, so it just varies.
So universally, it's a requirement at each campus, some form of survey?
For some level of population. It does vary. Some campuses will require all freshmen to do it. Some campuses require all resident housing students to do it as incoming. So it just depends on the campus and which product they choose to go with.
Got it. And then in terms of just funding, I'm curious, I mean, if you're like the rest of county drug and alcohol treatment programs, wellness or prevention programs, you're struggling funding. I'm curious where you are in the pecking order from a campus perspective and, you know, where it just generally, the struggles come as it relates to issues of resources.
So we're fortunate at San Diego State because we did develop the eCheckup to Go tool, and so we're able to use that without any added cost. We also invest in our health promotion team, and we've had the opportunity to utilize funding that has come through a university-wide strategic initiative plan, which made AOD a focus. So there was a group of leaders throughout the campus community that made this a priority and has allocated resources directly for this initiative. And so while it is a student affairs initiative largely worked through with our health promotion department, we also have a group across the campus who are committed to this, both have resources and have programming available.
So I imagine it sounds like you guys do it as well or better than most. That's the presentation. I'm curious if that's the case more broadly across the rest of the system.
Gail from Chico. And yes, actually, we established a Center for Alcohol and Drug Education back in 1988. We prioritized it, and we certainly have been funding it. We subscribe to Alcohol EDU, and we require that of all of our first-time freshmen entering students. And then we have a number of programs. If you go down the elements that the presentation showed with regard to policy, enforcement, education prevention programs, training, intervention, assessment, and resources. We populate each of these categories and have, I think, state-of-the-art programs for our students that are working very, very well. So it is a priority on our campus.
That's great. I appreciate it. And let me offer just for your consideration, a quite significant sum of money will be set aside now on an annual basis under Prop 64. And those dollars are available if they are sought out. And it would be a real shame if the system did not aggressively go after that pot of money. And I emphasize pot of money, not lost on me, the cannabis initiative. And the reason why is it's not just for marijuana, drug and alcohol, or drug treatment, quite the contrary. The initiative prescribes 60% of the set aside. Remember, the initiative, we anticipate 5 to 7 years, the maturation of that, of the legalization effort will generate in excess of $1 billion a year, of which 60% is set aside for just these type of programs. It's prescribed in the initiative. 20% law enforcement, 20% environmental remediation, 60% broadly for children, youth, family, drug and alcohol treatment. It is, a real, it didn't occur to me until your presentation of the opportunity in particular at our campuses to get front and center in that. And it's as I say, significant dedicated source of funding to substantially expand potentially your programs across campuses. So I encourage you to do that, and also encourage you to take advantage of my role as it relates to that distribution of resources, and do so sooner than later, as the persuasion industry is respectfully moving in to attach themselves to those dollars. And I would hope we are among that legion of group to assert ourselves as well.
Yeah, we'll most definitely be exploring those dollars. And the CSU in the past have also participated in other statewide grants. The Office of Traffic Safety has given grants before, which we've participated in for DUI checks and DUI drunk driving education and so forth, but also statewide SAMHSA grants as well. But I know Jim had a comment also.
Well, thank you for that that comment. As I've looked at some of the discussion about the resources available, it does seem that often it's K through 12 and that the college environment has not been front and center. So I'm glad to hear, I know the UCs were included, but I'm glad to hear that may be available to us.
Yeah, no, don't, and again, someone literally drafted the initiative. Make no mistake that there was no, I mean, to the extent we loosely defined, but this is a work in progress. And you're right, the UC system, actually, we prescribe UC San Diego in particular for research dollars, and there's hundreds of millions of dollars of available funding for the UC system. They were a disproportionate beneficiary compared to the CSU, but as it relates to attaching these dollars, K through 12 should not be the exclusive frame in terms of our consideration. And so again, I really encourage you, it's self-evident now to me, the opportunity here to build on your success, and I want to make sure we have those resources available.
Thank you. Trustee Abrego, and then Trustee Morales.
I may have missed it, but did you talk a little bit about the alcohol-related sexual assault program?
We didn't mention that specifically, although two of the programs we talked about, the Fret Manners and Sister, as well as the house party training, anything Greek focused has a very strong sexual assault foundation with alcohol intertwined, really focusing on those high risk party environments. But we do have substantial sexual assault programming on campus, which of course, when weaved in with consent, which it always is in our programming, would have an alcohol and other drug focus in the conversation.
And also to add to that, there are other questions in the NCHA survey that do address that area for sexual assault, personal safety, and so forth, and which is a whole other conversation and much larger presentation. But our campuses also have mandatory training as well for students, and that does cover the sexual assault and the crossover or impact of alcohol use as well.
Trustee Morales.
Yeah, I had a couple questions. One was about is alcohol use going up or down? That's one of my questions. And I'm on different, say, age groups. And the other is, I think Stephanie referred to high-risk populations, and I'd like to know what those populations are.
Well, let me start with that, and then Jim can probably answer the use and the trends much better than I can. So the NCHA right now, as far as system-wide data, is the first time we've done this. So this is really the benchmarking data. So there's no comparative data that we could say 2 years ago, 4 years ago, 6 years ago, here's where we're at, up, down, so forth. 2 years, 4 years down the road, we may be able to see that. So right now, all that I can say is that the alcohol use and also the perceptions of alcohol use is the same with our students that it is nationally. That's not to say that that's acceptable. It's depending on the level of uses and daily uses. But that's kind of where we're at in regards to the data. The second part of your question on the use, you had another question?
Yeah, I mean, Stephanie referred to high risk populations.
Right.
That are being addressed. So, you know, what are these
so in this,
high risk populations?
Within the NCHA system-wide, when we had the person do the analysis for us, which is a faculty member at Cal State, at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, through race and ethnicity, there was no significant difference in regards to high risk. There was difference between males and females. Males tend to drink more than females. The one standout community, although the numbers were small, but the one standout community that we need to take a closer look at was, in fact, the non-binary students, the transgender students. So based on the data that we have today, if we had to focus our efforts and look at who is a high-risk population, that would be the population we need to take a closer look at.
What was that population again?
The high-risk population were the non-binary students, the transgender students. Those are the ones in regards to alcohol prescription use as well as smoking were much higher than any other gender.
With respect to the trends nationally, we've been in a very long-term decline in alcohol abuse, misuse, binge drinking since the 1980s. The decline is not as steep as it was a couple decades ago. So we can't really speak to our particular campus or the system, but nationally, that's, if you think back to the 80s and before, drinking was a lot more. And then with respect to our high-risk populations at SDSU, our sample for the NCHA was only 700. And so when you start talking about some of the various populations, we can't break it down and make many statements. So the CSU-wide data is better for that sort of analysis.
Any other questions or comments?
Chair Campbell, I don't think Kalia had the opportunity to introduce herself and perhaps to tell us what your role is at San Diego State. Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm joining on Eric Rivera's behalf. He's our Vice President for Student Affairs, and I'm the Assistant Vice President in Student Affairs, overseeing our health and wellness areas, health promotion being one of them. Thank you.
Okay, Chair Eisen, that concludes today's business of the Committee on Educational Policy.
Thank you, Trustee Kimball. Trustee Fagan, will you please convene first the Committee on Governmental Relations, then the Committee on Audit?
Thank you, Chair Eisen. The Committee on Governmental Relations has come to order. I note that no one has requested to address the committee during the public comment period today. And on today's agenda, we have one consent item and one information item. The consent item is the approval of the May 2017 meeting minutes. Are there any objections to the approval of the minutes? Hearing none, minutes are approved. Next on the agenda is a state legislative update. This is an information item. Vice Chancellor Garrett Ashley, please introduce the report.
Thank you, Trustee